It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
You need like a cup.
I
Like a little cup, and then turn it like that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Right?
That's okay. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Last time I was just doing the situation.
How many commonest questions I ask on this histology quiz? Layers, we can find them, mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and those sublayers, and also adventitious. I'll go through everything as we go through the GI tract. I want to start at the beginning of the GI tract. For us, it's going to start at the esophagus. There's the esophagus, the whole wall. This is a low mag, it's like 20x. You don't have 20x on your scopes. It's like low mag is good to do like the layers. You see all the layers. You don't see serosa very well at all. It's at the bottom. You barely see its fatty tissue. Top, the mucosa contains 3 parts. It's an epithelium. All this here, even the dark purple, is epithelium. It's a stratified squamous epithelium. Right below it, the connective tissue is the lamina propria. And this layer here is the muscularis mucosa. So from here to here is mucosa. This loose connective tissue, submucosa. These 2 big slabs of muscle, the muscularis externa, the inner, the circular layer, the longitudinal layer. Do you see how the 2 layers here? Top layer, bottom layer. Okay, so those are the layers. Let's look at the mucosa closer up. Capture you. We go higher up. Is 100x. This is artifact there. I think I'd like to slide down better. Hold on, let me try it off. I'll put it back. Oh, yeah, better. So this is a stratified squamous epithelium. This is all epithelium. That's the basal layer of the epithelium. But this is lamina propria, and that is muscularis mucosa. Okay. I mean, I could ask you muscularis mucosa or lamina propria on any part of the GI tract, but I like to do it here because they're very common. So, what did I say that was? Lamina propria and muscularis mucosa. Those are glands in the submucosa. Okay. So that's it with esophagus. I'll move on. Stomach. There are three parts of the stomach here, because there are different regions of the stomach. They all look a little different. So when you work with this slide, here's one slice of stomach. Here's a second. Let me go to a low mag. What do you call the folds? Yeah, the mucosal folds are the rugae in the stomach. So there's 1, 2, and here's the third one. Okay, let's look at the first one over here. Let's go to a higher mag. Let's do layers. One question I could ask is, where are we in the GI tract? Stomach. Layers. Here to here. Mucosa. Submucosa. Muscularis externa. Serosa or adventitia. There are 3 layers of muscle in here, although I can't even tell what the 3 are, so I wouldn't ask you that. You can just say muscularis externa, and that'll be good enough. I also want you to, I like to use this one for pits and glands. What's the goal for a whole layer? That's a pit. The answer would be gastric pit. If I point deeper in the mucosa, gastric gland. Let's look at the mucosa higher up. Here's the epithelium. It's a simple columnar epithelium, but they form pits. So if I point down here, those are glands. The chief cells, the peptic cells, mostly. Okay, so that's what I would ask. Gastric pit, gastric gland, what's that?
Muscularis.
Yeah, this is actually muscularis mucosa. The lamina propria, can't really see it. It's there, can't see it. Muscularis mucosa, submucosa, this loose connective tissue. Look at upper stomach. What are these little shards of beef here? What layer? Yeah, muscularis mucosa should be the oblique layer. Let's move on. More stomach closer up. So if I point to the top there, what are you going to call it? Pit. Gastric pit. Deeper in the mucosa. Gastric gland. This is all muscularis mucosa. Okay. Muscularis mucosa. This is submucosa. You can see some blood vessels in there. Let's look at the muscularis externa part. I'm looking at this, I see 3 layers. Like 1, 2, 3. Kind of hard to see. They're there. 1, 2, 3. Let's look at another one. This one's the easiest to tell, I think. This is the mucosa. It's a pit. There's a glands down there. So what is this? Muscularis mucosa. Let's look at the muscularis externa. I can put it right here. because at the edge, the layers kind of rip from each other, so we kind of cheat and tell what's what. The oblique layer, the circular layer, the longitudinal layer, the muscularis externa. So that's all right. I have lemon appropriate on your study guide for stomach, but I'm not going to ask you that. You can't see it, basically. It's stuck in between, just a word. Okay, let's move on. Small intestine. Are there any questions on stomach before I proceed? Serosa. Let's see. I think that first section had one.
Are these three sections as like one is deeper in the stomach, one is more...
There are different regions. Like I think it's going to be like body, pylorus, and one other region. And I don't know which one's which. So you don't have to know. Does anyone know? Just tell me. It's hard to tell. I don't know. And I haven't found books that tell me. Someone asked about serosa right there. Okay, any other questions? Okay, again, small intestine. I pulled the trays out on the desk for the look at them. It won't be much time, but it might have like a half an hour or something. I'm just curious, do you guys actually look at the slides on your own before you take the microscope quiz?
Yes, yes.
That's advisable.
You take pictures.
I can kind of tell if you don't. You struggle a little more, of course. That's the practice, right? There are three parts of the small intestine. This is duodenum, jejunum, ileum, the big old purple splotches of malt. Let's go and look at duodenum first under a higher nag. Duodenum. Layer, that's mucosa. Here's the submucosa. What are Brunner's glands? Here's muscularis externa. I see two layers, circular, longitudinal layer of muscularis externa. See a bit of serosa out there. Serosa. So I'll take a picture of that. For sure, Brunner's glands will be on the histology quiz and the lab practical. I always ask that one. Okay, jejunum. The overall idea of the intestine is this villi crypt thing. I know you can probably see in the dark, but I'll try to go anyways. Villi crypt. The crypts have like secretions that help absorb food. The villi are just finger-like extensions to increase the surface area of the small intestine. Because remember, what are we doing here? Absorbing food. That's what we do. We want to increase surface area. So it's like kind of have this villi, these finger-like projections, then a crypt. Villi, crypt. Villi, crypt. Crypt has red cells called Paneth cells. I'll draw red here. I'll turn the light. I'll leave this here because I don't know if you can see it in the dark. Paneth cells have secretion to help you absorb food and have antimicrobial agents. They're important because they're in the crypt. Finger-like projections are called villi. Is that villi or crypt? It's the villi. The crypts are down here. Okay. The old school name for intestinal crypt is cryptolibercum with Paneth cells. So the technical call intestinal crypt, that's the easier name. The old school name that you'll see. Cryptolibercum. one of those things I'll just say, I'm impressed that you put that. What does that really mean when I grade? Oh, they put the crypts of lubricant. It kind of makes me a little happy. And I'm kind of lenient when I grade the rest of your text. Oh, they misspelled that, but that's okay. They put crypts of lubricant. Yeah, that's kind of how it affects me. So you should try to remember that one. It might help you.
Point out the pad of the cells, or you can't really see them on here.
Let's do that. That sounds like fun. Okay, we'll go higher. You gotta go to what mag to see cells? 400. There's not 400, there's 100. You can kind of see it. The pad cells are supposed to be red. Get a picture of that. So the question on a histology quiz would be identify. Oh, that's the V line. This is all mucosa. The pad cells are the red cells in the crypts here. They're all there. So let's go to magnify that a little more. A lot of goblet cells. That's the V line. Let's go to the crypt. Here's the crypt. Go to blue. So these red cells are pad cells. Okay, kind of reddish.
According to the inside ring, right?
These cells? Yeah, this inside ring. So this is the crypt. This stuff sandwiched in between is lamina propria tissue. Between there's crypt, lamina propria, there's crypt. Okay, I want to move on to the other parts of the small intestine. That's duodenum. Now, how are you going to tell it's duodenum? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not duodenum. I'm sorry. It's jejunum. How do you tell it's jejunum? Sorry for the speaking.
The malt.
No, there's no malt here. Look for the crypts of Lieberkuhn. Okay. So how do you tell it's duodenum? Look for the Brunner's glands. How do you tell it's jejunum? That's where I'll ask you about the crypts. Okay. But you have the other layers as well. This is all mucosa, submucosa, and muscularis externa. I don't see serosa. It's gone.
So there's no serosa?
No serosa. Not on that picture. I mean, don't depend on me telling you. Just try to get used to seeing it. I see it there. Do you see it? Mm-hmm. And it's night. I go to this one, and it's like, oh, I don't see it. Oh. So don't just try to remember, what did he say, what did he say? Just try to, know yourself. That's much better. Like this one. Do you see it? What's it not there? Maybe it's down here. No, yeah, now I'm starting to see it. And I see the blood vessel is there. So, this is ileum. Ileum's got the malt. These big purple splotches of malt. So in terms of layers, there's the muscular mucosa. So that's all mucosa. This is the mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. It really dominates the submucosa, but do you see how it kind of infiltrates the mucosa? Which is why it's called mucosa-associated. But this is all submucosa. So what's this? Layer. Muscularis externa. Which sublayer is that? Be specific. Longitudinal, that's circular. That's ileum. So let's do colon when we go. Move this on. Colon. That's a good picture. Okay. Let's do our layers. Mucosa, there's goblet cells there. Here's mucosa from here on up. So what's this pink layer? Muscularis mucosa. So then what's this layer? Submucosa. Lamina propria is like all the dark purple stuff stuck in between these tight tubes. So this is colon, and it's got to move the feces along. It has very prominent muscularis externa to help move your feces down to the rectum. So if I say identify layer, be specific, what's this one? Longitudinal, circular. Let's take a close look at the epithelium so we can see the goblet cells. If you don't have goblet cells, you can't move your bowels. You can't do it. You need to get enemas for the rest of your life. At this map, you can see the goblet cells a little bit, little bubbles. Let's go to 400x. They're like all over the place. All the mucins that they secrete will keep you regular. What we're seeing is a simple cuboidal epithelium. It's dominated by goblet cells. One of my colleagues, she used to be a nurse, told me about a case. Not a case, a case she did. She had a patient, and her job, she was in grad school, she would go to his house like once a month and give him these enemas that she had to administer to him because he lost the function of his goblet cells. And so he would only have a bowel movement once, like a month, when she came to do the enemas. She said that was enough time where he had to do it. The thing about this case that was interesting, this guy, he kept it a secret his whole life from his family. He was married, he had kids, the kids grew up, and he kept it from them. He didn't want to burden them with this, that they knew this about him. And my colleague, Professor Woolsey, she would just go to his house once a month and just do these enemas, flush him out, because he lost the function of his goblet cells. So they're very important. It's not part of the study guide.
What would cause that?
It was some kind of infection. I have to ask her. There was some kind of infection, autoimmune thing that attacked the epithelium and he lost the function of his goblet cells. So I can't be more specific than that. I just can't remember. I just remember getting enemas for the rest of your life. I can't be pleasant. Okay, I'm done. For the time that remains, study models or astrology slides, or you go home and stay warm and dry.